Hey friends, it's Len from 1A Auto. So today in the studio, we have a second generation Jeep Grand Cherokee. We want to go over some of the top problems that we've come to find. So let's get started. Now for our first problem, I want to talk about blend doors and blend door actuators. Now, what is a blend door or even a blend door actuator? Essentially, if you were to get behind your dash, there's going to be blend doors that are in there that are going to be able to divert the air that's getting pushed through by your blower motor. The reason why you would want to have that air getting diverted is because essentially, if you were to go ahead and put this knob on hot, that's going to end up pushing the air through your hot heater core that's getting heated by your coolant and then warming up the air that's coming through your little vents here, and that's always nice. Of course, if you wanted it in the opposite direction, you can go ahead and turn it to cold, and that's going to divert the air away from the heater core and then just bring it through the vents, and then you'll have some nice cool air coming through, and that's nice as well. With that said, the issue that this actually has is that the blend doors can tend to bind up inside. If the blend door binds up, you might go ahead and switch this from cold to hot, but the air that's coming out of here says, no, we're not going through that heater core. We're going to kind of stay where we're at. We like it here. Well, that's not really the best thing, because maybe you don't want to have cold air blowing through your vents when you're expecting hot air. That could happen for a couple different reasons. Essentially, maybe like I said, that blend door could be bound up for some reason. Maybe something fell inside one of your vents, a penny, a nickel, I don't know, a little wood chip or something like that, and it binds up the blend door. Or even the actuator itself that's supposed to be able to move that blend door isn't getting the proper communication that it's supposed to, or that's damaged in some way. So you're going to need to do a little bit of diagnosing to see what's going on. If I was to go ahead and try to turn this and I could hear a little clunk, 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 clunk coming from behind the dash there, that's telling me that the actuator's working, but the blend door is bound up for some reason. So that's something that I'm going to need to get in there and check out. Luckily for us, they came up with an updated sub-assembly with the blend doors inside there, so in case you did actually have this issue and you had to go ahead and service it or even replace things, you're not necessarily going to have this issue reoccurringly. Okay friends, so now we're going to talk about our second problem, and this one's going to come down to window regulators. Now the window regulator is going to be located behind your door panel here, and the purpose of the window regulator is so that as you go ahead and you flip your switch to either put your window up or down, the switch is going to send power down to your motor, which is of course attached to that window regulator, and then the window regulator is going to go ahead and either lift the window up for you or bring it down. So you don't necessarily have to go ahead and grab onto it like a monkey and try to do it yourself. Unfortunately, with these window regulators, they tend to bind up inside. When this happens, you might go ahead and pull on the switch a little bit, and maybe it kind of comes up, or maybe it doesn't. Or even, in some cases, it starts coming up, and then it kind of goes off at a little kilter, and seems like it comes off track. If this is the case, typically it's going to come down to, like I said, the window regulator. That's going to be located right behind here, and it's fairly easy to fix. Now right here is a window regulator, and no, this isn't the one for this Jeep, but it is something that I can show you. Right up along this channel right here is where, of course, the window would be mounted, and then this is all going to go to the door, and it's going to be held in place so it doesn't move necessarily. So now as you power up that switch and send power down to your motor, it's going to, of course, move this cog right along here, which is what's going to make this pivot, and then make your window go up or down. So essentially, if this gets bound up in any of its pivoting points, that's obviously going to cause an issue where the window is not going to want to move. So if we're going to talk about fixes real quick, we're going to of course want to diagnose to see what's going on. You want to make sure you get down to the motor and make sure you have power getting there. If for some reason you don't have power, well then you got a different issue that you're going to have to chase down. More than likely it's an electrical issue. It could come down to the switch or even maybe a fuse issue. But of course, if you did happen to find that it is the regulator, go ahead and replace that, and of course be careful with your glass. Make sure you're wearing safety glasses because you don't want anything to potentially happen to your eyes. Now for our third problem, we're going to talk about fuel tank recirculation issues. Now for symptoms for this, you're probably going to notice it at the gas pump. Of course, with this Jeep right here, you're probably going to be spending a lot of time at the gas pump, so if you end up having this issue, you're really going to want to deal with it ASAP. What I'm talking about here is you go ahead and you try to fill up your Jeep. You put it in there, you click the little thing that lets it go ahead and autofill on its own. You're hanging out, you're waiting for it to do its thing, but it shuts off. It only put in, what, $5 or 3 gallons worth of gas for some reason, but it shut off. You know you had an empty tank. You hit it again, release it, you wait a little bit, boom, it shuts off again. What's going on? Typically what this comes down to is a fuel pressure issue inside the tank. Essentially what's going on is you try to pump in the fluid right here, or the gas, it's going down in, but for some reason there isn't enough air being able to come back out. So basically it's kind of pushing that fuel back up, and then of course the gas pump thinks that, well, your fuel tank's full when it's not. So some of the common causes for this could potentially be the vapor circulation tube, the fuel fill tube, or even the evap system. It's going to have a little valve in there that's supposed to make sure that the air is able to come out as you're putting fuel in. If, of course, that valve isn't working properly, or if there's any type of restriction that's going on inside the system, you're gonna have an issue where you're not gonna be able to put in fuel and the pump's gonna keep turning off on you. All right, now for our fourth problem, we're gonna talk about a thermostat. Now, the thermostat serves a very important job inside your cooling system. Essentially, what it's supposed to do is help your Jeep achieve operating temperature. So what it's gonna do is it's gonna stay closed, keep the coolant inside the engine, so as the engine's warming up, it's gonna warm up that coolant. But of course, as the engine starts to get maybe a little bit too hot after it achieved the operating temperature, this little valve right here is supposed to open up. When the thermostat valve opens up, that's going to allow the coolant to be able to flow through the radiator, which in turn will cool it down a little bit. Of course, if this valve was stuck shut or even open, you're going to notice that you have an issue with your cooling system. If it's stuck open, more than likely you're going to be running a little cool, especially in the wintertime. And if it's stuck shut, well, you're probably going to have an overheating condition, and that's going to be very bad in any condition. So symptoms that you might have if you have a failing thermostat could essentially be your Jeep just doesn't want to heat up to the normal operating temperature, or even it overheats past that normal operating temperature. In either case, it's very bad overall. Other than that, maybe you're sitting inside the Jeep after you've let it warm up for a little while. You go ahead and you turn on that heat, but for some reason there's just cold air blowing from the vents. The thermostat being stuck in the open position will of course make this happen. So as far as fixes for this, you of course want to diagnose to make sure that you're having an issue with the thermostat and it's not necessarily something else. If of course you had your Jeep running for a little while and it was at the normal operating temperature, if you were to carefully grab onto your upper radiator hose and kind of gauge the temperature of it, it's probably going to be pretty hot, so be careful. And then go ahead and carefully reach down to your lower radiator hose. You want to essentially try to see if these have approximately the same temperature. If one's super hot and one's very cold, more than likely this is stuck shut. If you happen to find that you're having an issue with your thermostat being stuck in the open or shut position, it's something that you're definitely going to want to replace. Typically when you go ahead and do this, you're going to want to make sure you drain out all of your coolant, flush out any of the existing coolant that's in there, and then of course we're going to replace this thermostat, and then we're going to go ahead and install the brand new coolant as well. Okay friends, for our fifth problem, we're going to talk about four-wheel drive differential leaks. Now, if you were to carefully slide underneath your Jeep, you're going to be able to see up in the front a front differential. It's going to be very common for these leaks, especially along this area right along here. This is considered your pinion seal. The reason why these would typically leak essentially would be, of course, this drive shaft is going to be spinning as your wheels are moving. Any dirt or debris that makes its way up onto the rubber seal is, of course, going to wear it down. And then once that happens, you're, of course, going to have fluid that starts making its way out. The pinion seal is definitely an area that you're going to want to pay attention to. Other things that you're going to want to pay attention to on these differentials would be down at the ends where the axles go in. If you happen to see fluid coming out of either end, that essentially means that you're having an issue with your axle seal. Now, the axle seal on the front differential isn't going to be located all the way out by the wheels. On these, it's going to be located much closer to the actual differential itself, and it's not necessarily the easiest job to replace. Typically, if you wanted to go ahead and try to service this, you're going to have to go ahead and take apart your front differential cover and then remove the gearing from inside. Once you've done that, of course, you're going to remove your wheels and the axles and everything like that, and then you're going to be able to separate everything and get to those axle seals. Now, for the rear differential, you're of course going to have that pinion seal. You're going to want to pay attention to that. And then, of course, if you were to look down along the backing plate area, you might see some crispies and crunchies and gooeys that look like this. If you see a whole bunch of gooey buildup on the backing plate that looks like that, that's essentially telling you that you have an axle seal leak coming from there. Of course, if this was leaking like that, it's more than likely going to go ahead and get on your e-brake shoes and even your brake pads. This is going to be very unsafe, so you want to definitely take care of it. Okay, I know. On these top problems, usually we give you about 5 of them. For me, I like to go a little bit extra sometimes because you know what? I really love you guys. On these Jeeps, it's going to be super important to pay attention to this area right along here. This is your rear A-arm. You're going to have some mounting bushings that come up along this, and if you see that they're starting to separate like this one is right there, that's going to be very dangerous. Other areas that you might happen to find, of course, would be on the other side. You're going to have the same exact thing on the opposite, and then right here in the center, you're going to have a ball joint. If any of these are loose, you're going to feel like you're loose and squirrely driving down the road. You could potentially feel as though the Jeep just doesn't have the traction that you feel like it should. And of course, if you're going around a corner, it might feel like it's just kind of not very safe. Now, if you live in a rust belt like me, you're going to have to deal with rust. That's just one of the things that we have to deal with. If you were to look along the rear arms here, of course it might look fairly decent. But then as you start to look a little bit closer, you might happen to see that the metal itself is starting to rot away. You might also happen to see that the bushing is starting to pull away from this arm. Obviously, any of this could be an issue because if this arm was to get weak and let go on you, you're probably going to not be going down the road very straight and potentially, well, go off the road. Now, of course, if you had to replace either of these items, you're typically going to want to go ahead and check all of your front end and all of your suspension. If you happen to see anything leaking or rotted or broken, go ahead and replace it. After that, you definitely want to make sure you get yourself a four-wheel alignment. Okay friends, so that's pretty much what I've got for you for top problems on a second generation Jeep Grand Cherokee. I went over a lot of stuff here, hopefully you kept up. If you got one of these Jeeps or even a car of your own and you want to talk about it, leave it in the comment section below because I always love to hear from you. If you like the video, smash on the like button for me, it means the world. While you're at it, go ahead and subscribe and ring the bell. That way there you can be kept up with all of our latest content. Thanks.